When I first started dating, my dad gave me a piece of advice that stayed with me for the rest of my life. He said, "Michael, a man of value doesn't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or dishonesty from anyone, especially not from a partner. Always stay true to who you are, and never let anyone diminish your worth." Those words became my guiding principle, even when life tested me in ways I never expected. Fast forward to my life in Austin, Texas, where I lived with my wife, Jessica, and our twin daughters, Olivia and Sophia. Jessica and I had been married for 18 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I always believed we were solid. That was until the night everything changed. Jessica and I were sitting in our living room, the soft glow of the TV illuminating the space. I took a deep breath, knowing what I was about to say wouldn't go over well. "Jessica," I began, keeping my voice steady, "there's been a change of plans. The merger meeting got moved up, and I have to fly out first thing tomorrow morning. I won't be back until late Sunday night." Her reaction was immediate. "Are you kidding me, Michael? We've been planning this for months. Olivia's recital is on Saturday, and I'm supposed to go alone? Do you know how embarrassing that's going to be for me? Can't someone else handle this meeting?" I tried to explain, though I could already see the frustration in her eyes. "Jessica, this isn't just any meeting. This deal is worth over $2 billion, and I've been leading the project for the past year. Nobody else can step in for me. It's my responsibility. A lot of people's livelihoods are tied to this. I get why you're upset, and I promise I'll make it up to you. The bonus from this deal will help us both, but right now, there's no other choice. I'll be home by Sunday." She was livid. The conversation shut down completely. She refused to talk to me for the rest of the night and even told me to sleep in the guest room. That coldness, that distance, it was so unlike her, and it caught me off guard. I tried to reason with her, to help her see my perspective, but she wasn't having it. Eventually, I gave up, packed for my trip, and spent the night alone in the guest room. I knew how much Olivia's recital meant to her. Our daughter had been practicing for months, and Jessica had been her biggest supporter. Missing it wasn't just about me, it was about letting Olivia down. But I couldn't change the situation. I figured I'd have to face the music and make things up to Jessica once I got back. The next morning, I tried to say goodbye before heading out, but the bedroom door was locked. I called out that I loved her and promised to check in as soon as I landed, but there was no response. With a heavy heart, I walked out to the waiting car, feeling awful about leaving things the way they were. After 18 years of marriage, I thought Jessica would understand why this was necessary, but it seemed like I'd miscalculated. I called her before my flight, but she didn't answer, so I left a voicemail apologizing again. I sent a text before takeoff, then another when I landed in Chicago, but still, nothing. I knew she was angry, and I'd need to put in serious effort to win her back. With no other options, I called our twin daughters, Olivia and Sophia, who were away at college. I explained the situation and asked them to check in on their mom. They promised to look out for her, and I felt a little better knowing they had her back. Olivia and Sophia had always been Daddy's girls, and I appreciated them more than I could say. When I arrived in Chicago, I checked into my hotel and called my CEO, James Carter, only to be blindsided by some unexpected news: the meeting had been cancelled. The other company's CEO had a family emergency, and everything was postponed. The moment I heard that, I booked the first direct flight back to Austin. If I timed it right, I could make it to Olivia's recital by 7 p.m. It was cutting it close, but I hoped showing up might help smooth things over with Jessica. After landing in Austin, I picked up a rental car and let the GPS guide me straight to the recital venue. It was a little past 6:30 p.m. when I arrived, and the place was buzzing with energy. Parents and kids filled the lobby, and the sound of laughter and chatter echoed through the hall. Despite the long hours of travel, I felt a sense of relief just being there. I made my way to the auditorium, scanning the crowd for Jessica. It wasn't easy to spot her in a sea of people, but I finally saw her sitting near the front, her eyes fixed on the stage. Olivia was up next, and I could see the pride in Jessica's face as she watched our daughter prepare to perform. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should approach her, but then I decided to take a seat a few rows back. I didn't want to disrupt the moment. As Olivia began her performance, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. She was incredible, confident, graceful, and full of talent. Jessica was right, should have been here from the start. When the recital ended, I made my way to the stage to congratulate Olivia. She was surprised to see me but hugged me tightly. "Dad! You made it," she exclaimed. Jessica, however, was less enthusiastic. She gave me a cold look and turned away without a word. I knew she was still upset, but I hoped my presence would at least show her that I cared. Later that evening, back at home, I tried to talk to Jessica. "I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier," I said, my voice soft. "I know how much this meant to you and Olivia. I couldn't miss that meeting. But I'm here now, and I want to make things right." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she crossed her arms and looked at me with a mix of anger and sadness. "You always put work first, Michael. Always. Do you even realize how much you've missed? How much you've hurt us?" Her words hit me hard. I knew I'd been focused on my career, but I never thought it was at the expense of my family. "Jessica, I'm trying," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm trying to provide for us, to give us a good life. But if that's not enough, tell me what I need to do." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know, Michael. I don't know if I can keep doing this." That night, we slept in separate rooms again. The distance between us felt wider than ever, and I didn't know how to bridge it. The next morning, I left for work early, hoping to clear my head. But as I sat in my office at Carter Financial Group, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The days that followed were tense. Jessica and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was only about the kids or household matters. The warmth that had once defined our relationship was gone, replaced by a cold, uncomfortable silence. I tried to reach out, to apologize again, but she shut me out every time. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find Jessica sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and her hands trembling. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't do this anymore, Michael. I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. I've been unhappy for a long time, and I think we need to separate." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had known things were bad, but I never thought it would come to this. "Jessica, please," I said, my voice breaking. "Don't do this. We can work through it. I'll do whatever it takes." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's too late, Michael. I've tried to tell you how I feel, but you never really listened. You were always too busy with work, too focused on everything but us. I can't keep living like this." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. What about the kids? What about Olivia and Sophia? They need us to be together. They need us to be happy, she said firmly. And we're not. Not like this. We talked for hours that night, but in the end, her decision was final. She wanted a separation, and there was nothing I could say to change her mind. The next morning, she packed a bag and left to stay with her sister, leaving me alone in the house we had built together. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain, but it was no use. Every room in the house reminded me of her, of the life we had shared. I felt lost, adrift, and completely alone. The separation was hard on all of us. Olivia and Sophia were devastated, and I could see the pain in their eyes every time they came to visit. They tried to stay strong, but it was clear they were struggling to make sense of what was happening. Jessica and I did our best to co-parent, but the tension between us made even simple conversations difficult. Months passed, and I slowly began to rebuild my life. I started seeing a therapist, who helped me work through my feelings of guilt and regret. I also made an effort to be more present for Olivia and Sophia, taking them on weekend trips and spending quality time with them whenever I could. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to be the father they deserved. One day, while I was at work, I received a call from Jessica. Her voice was shaky, and I could tell something was wrong. "Michael, I need to talk to you," she said. "Can we meet?" We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near her sister's place. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying. "What's going on?" I asked as I sat down. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she clutched her coffee cup. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I think I made a mistake." I felt a lump form in my throat. "What do you mean?" "I mean I miss you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I miss us." I was so angry and hurt, and I thought leaving was the only way to fix things. But now I realize I was wrong. I don't want to lose you, Michael. I don't want to lose our family. Her words took me by surprise. I had spent months trying to come to terms with our separation, and now she was saying she wanted to try again. Part of me wanted to jump at the chance, to take her back and pretend the past few months had never happened. But another part of me was hesitant, afraid of getting hurt again. "Jessica, I began, but she cut me off. "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "And I know I have a lot to make up for. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I love you, Michael. I always have." I looked into her eyes, searching for the truth in her words. And in that moment, I realized I still loved her too. Despite everything we had been through, despite the pain and the heartache, I couldn't imagine my life without her. "I love you too, Jessica," I said, my voice trembling. "But we can't just go back to the way things were. We need to work on this, together. We need to be honest with each other, to really listen and communicate. If we're going to make this work, it has to be different this time." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Jessica and I decided to take things slow. We started couples therapy, where we learned to communicate more openly and honestly. It wasn't easy, there were moments of frustration and tears, but we were both committed to making it work. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly listening to each other. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we sat on the porch of our home, the one we had built together. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the backyard. Jessica turned to me, her eyes soft and reflective. "Do you remember when we first moved into this house?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. I nodded, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. "Of course. We were so excited. We spent weeks picking out furniture and painting the walls. You wanted everything to be perfect." She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in what felt like forever. "I was so obsessed with that shade of blue for the living room. What was it called again?" "Seaside Breeze," I said, grinning. "And you were right, it looked amazing." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our shared memories filling the space between us. Finally, Jessica spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. "Michael, I know we've been through a lot. And I know I hurt you. But I want you to know that I'm all in. I want to rebuild this, our marriage, our family, our life together. I just need to know if you're all in too. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I am, Jessica. I've always been. I love you, and I love our family. I don't want to lose that. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Then let's do this. Let's rebuild, together. Rebuilding our marriage wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Jessica and I worked hard to regain the trust and intimacy we had lost. We made a conscious effort to prioritize each other, to communicate openly, and to show appreciation for the little things. Slowly but surely, the cracks in our relationship began to heal. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Olivia and Sophia play in the backyard, Jessica turned to me with a smile. Do you remember what your dad said to you all those years ago? About being a man of value? I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Yeah. He said a man of value doesn't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or dishonesty. He said to always stay true to who I am. Jessica reached for my hand, her eyes filled with warmth. You've always been that man, Michael. Even when things were at their worst, you never lost sight of who you are. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with you in the first place. Her words touched me deeply. For so long, I had felt like I had failed as a husband, as a father, as a man. But in that moment, I realized that I hadn't lost myself. I had stayed true to my values, even when it was hard. And that was something to be proud of. As the years passed, our relationship grew stronger than ever. We celebrated milestones together, Olivia's high school graduation, Sophia's first job, our 20th wedding anniversary. We laughed, we cried, and we faced life's challenges as a team. And through it all, we never forgot the lessons we had learned. One day, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jessica turned to me with a mischievous grin. Do you remember that time you missed Olivia's recital because of that merger meeting? I groaned, shaking my head. How could I forget? You were furious. She laughed, her eyes sparkling. I was. But you know what? You came back. You showed up, even when it was hard. And that's what matters. I smiled, pulling her close. I'll always show up for you, Jessica. Always. And in that moment, I knew it was true. No matter what life threw our way, we would face it together. Because love isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, even when it's hard. And that's exactly what we had done.